Say recording on your side somewhere.
Yes, it does. Up in the top left. Cool.
Cool. Well, welcome everybody. It's Phoenix Counseling's third interview. Got a buddy of mine, Kirk Carver, in the house. Today we're going to be covering the relational factors of COVID-19, how it impacts Kirk and his wife Kay as far as the fitness side of things, and then tying it back into his missions and church life. So y'all know me and my bald head, but Kirk, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, Justin, I appreciate that. Thank you. My name is Kirk Carver, as Justin said. Presently, I've got two jobs. I work locally here at our church as the mobilization director, which really is just a fancy title for a missions pastor. We also still work with a missions organization out of Atlanta called Encompass World Partners, and we work in Chad, Africa. My wife and I lived there for 6 years, from 2008 to 2014, mid 2014, and continue to work there as well. As Justin mentioned, we both like to lift and work out, and that's kind of part of who we are, which has been changed by this virus situation.
Yeah, totally. We could do a whole nother interview on your adventures in Africa. But that's for another time. I guess too, it'd be good to touch on where you're at. Is a certain specific kind of community, and there's certain regulations that got tied to y'all because of COVID-19. Could you just talk again briefly to your community, where you're at? You don't need to name it if you don't want.
Sure,
but
it's no problem. Yeah, we're about an hour north of Orlando in a retirement, basically an active adult community, which has 125,000 people, all typically over the age of 55. We tend to be skewed on the younger end. My wife and I are in our mid 50s. And the reason we moved here was because my parents live here and they're in their mid 80s. So we're kind of here to be close to my folks. But yeah, it's an extremely active community with several dozen golf courses and several pools. And most of that has been shut down based on the preventative measures recommended by the CDC and followed through by Governor DeSantis. Still allowed to get outside, obviously, and walk and exercise a little bit and move around the community, but restaurants, country clubs, golf courses are still open, but they're only allowing one person per golf cart, and they're trying to slow down the amount of people playing right now. So there's still some opportunities, but based on the fact that we are a very high-risk age group, they've tried to do a good job at limiting a lot of these activities.
Cool. Man, thank you for sharing that. Because I'm just realizing, like, your age demographic, it's good to have. I'm glad I didn't even think about this, but I'm glad you came on because you can speak to that, and maybe some of the extra fears or concerns that could float around in the community. We were talking off air a little bit, but obviously people weren't there for that. What was it like for you, relationally speaking? We're talking about there's certain, like, just physical connection that, yeah, Zoom is cool, but there's some missing pieces to the puzzle.
There's no question about it. I mean, I was telling Justin that I'm a pretty strong introvert. And the first 3, 4, 5 days of this, wasn't really so bad for me. But I'm also a retired chiropractor, and the majority of my profession for over 20 years was my hands were on people. And you get accustomed to that. It's part of who I am as a person. And during this shutdown, man, it's hard to love on folks and to minister to people and be involved in people's lives when you can only speak to them through a screen door or through a laptop. It's difficult. People need connection with other people. I know a lot of millennials, younger folks, deal a lot on media and technology, but there's something about shaking someone's hand or giving someone a hug when they need it that's really important. And I didn't realize how much I actually missed that. Not only the giving portion, but the receiving portion. It's difficult. It really is.
What have you been doing? If you found anything that works, what have you been doing to mitigate some of those, that loss of that physical contact? What helped you?
Just contacting people, making extra phone calls, texting folks, finding out how they're doing, what they need. We're still able to have our we call them encore groups, but it's basically a small group at church. We're doing that via Zoom. And for the first couple of weeks, we did not do that. We just instituted that about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. And even something as small as that helps you feel connected. But just reaching out to folks, whether it's an old school note or a phone call or as I said, text message, just finding out how people are doing. And I found, interestingly enough, that people are craving that relational aspect. People are craving the contact.
I think you're right, and I think now that this is hitting on weeks 5 and 6, we're in Orange County, so we got locked down a little sooner. I think you're right. This cumulative effect of lack of human contact is like starting to wear people down.
It is.
And man, I think it's awesome that you're taking the initiative to reach out more, because I think that's what we're going to have to do. And ironically, I talked about a little this morning was, what's it like being an introvert? You said you're more introverted, but now having to initiate contact with others. Is that different for you, or?
It is a little bit different because I'm typically not the initiator of contact, but I'm finding, as I mentioned it, that it's no problem now. I mean, now if I had to do that for 6 or 8 weeks, I'd get worn out. And I'd probably want to, 3 or 4 days to recover, but I've got enough recovery time based on this shutdown that should not be a problem for a while. And yeah, it's really been a challenge. And for my wife, who's a strong extrovert, it's really hard for her as well, because she's always with people, always wants to be with people. For Kay, we could be out every night with people and it'd be wonderful, but for her, it's significantly harder on her right now than it is on me. Because her activity and her social life and our church life has been significantly altered based on this situation.
Yeah. So let's stick with you and Kay. Let's get into the physical. She's a triathlete. You're the heavy iron mover. Someone like you requires a gym, some specialized equipment and heavyweight area. And we're talking off air that Kay can run and bike, but the pools are shut down. Man, what's that been like for y'all physically, and how are you getting that energy out?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've actually figured that out yet. I mean, for Kay, she's been able to displace the swimming with more running and cycling. For me, I've got a set of dumbbells and a Swiss ball or a stability ball and, push-ups and stuff. But it honestly, it doesn't replace the powerlifting. And, I went through a period of kind of grumbling and being a little bit discouraged because, we were just starting to get a rhythm. Our team had competed in the senior games in December. We took about 2 weeks off and, we're setting up for competitions in midsummer, and that's all been altered. But, when you start to look at the bigger perspective of what this situation really is and the impact it's really having on people's lives, those are little issues, that sometimes my pride and my ego get in the way of having good perspective. So, so I'm doing what I can and, trying to deal with it, and there are days when I deal with it better than others, quite honestly, but most of the time it's okay because I just pray that it's a short-term situation. When I say short-term, it could be another month, it could be another 2 months, but in the bigger scheme of things, that's a pretty much a short-term situation.
Yeah. Man, what do you catch yourself doing when you have an off day? Like you're saying, some days are good, some not. What have those off days been looking like for you? Is it just things start building up and then you got to get them out? Like, what are those off days like?
It's more for me just a lack of motivation than it is a lot of internal stress. Okay. It's just like I should be doing this, but I'm just not gonna do it. And I think you have to come to the point where you're okay with that. Scripture talks about being sometimes rather than doing.
Yeah. Sometimes,
you have to be okay with, sitting on the couch in a pair of gym shorts and reading the newspaper or reading the book or you have to be okay with that because there's nothing wrong with that. You might want to talk to someone if it's something you're doing for 3 weeks in a row, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a professional or an expert in that area, but I think it's certainly okay to have a down day and to kind of just, not worry about what you're doing and not trying to be so super productive. Because a lot of people on social media are making these statements and comments about, what you need to be doing during this time. And I think you, the individual, needs to figure out what you need to be doing during this time, and not base your decision or your actions on what someone else is telling you to do.
Let's go with that. Two dudes, like to compete and get out there. What's it like on your end? Obviously the male perspective. You're a competitor, man. I do keep up with your competitions, and when you get new PRs and you're moving iron. But what's it like for you when you've seen some of these? Kirk, you need to come out of this knowing 9 languages, start 14 businesses, and whatever the deal is. Come out with a 12-pack of abs and look like Arnold. What's that like for you? That male competitive fire, but also holding, like, come on, let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my first response to those types of statements are, I just kind of almost want to laugh, because it's not realistic. And I'd like to see their results to see if they were able to achieve what they're claiming they were able to achieve. But the point being, I think, as I said earlier, I think people need to be okay with just being who they are and being real through this thing, because I think if people just get through this, that should be a sense of accomplishment. Because I don't have children living in my home. Like I said earlier in our pre-interview talk, my occupation, my income has not been affected yet by this situation. So my wife and I are in a much better place than a lot of folks are. A lot of folks have lost their income, and now not only are they out of income, now their kids are home, and they're dealing with a lot of stressors that they haven't dealt with before. So for a lot of people, this is a huge challenge, and I think they have to be okay with just getting through it, and to learn these languages, and to write a screenplay, and to create the next great American novel. I think it's a little bit ridiculous. Now, there might be some people that can do that,
Yeah.
But if you get your closet cleaned out, that's great. That's awesome, Or change the oil in your car. That's great. Just get through it.
We didn't necessarily talk too much about this, beforehand, but I know we had gotten a little bit about what your church is doing. I was also starting to think, with your job, you're a missions man. What has this done to the missionary type work? Travel's obviously shut down. How has this affected that side of the world? Because I really got no information on that from anybody. You're the first person.
I can only speak to the regions in which we work, or which I work, which is North Central Africa.
Sure.
And it's basically shut things down. Most of our staff, expat staff, has left the field. So they were all able to get out. Chad finally allowed a U.S. Embassy aircraft to come in and take out all the expats about a week and a half ago.
Wow.
So we have one family still in country. But realistically, it's impacted everything, because even within Cameroon, Chad, Central African Republic, and Nigeria, borders are shut down. Travel has been shut down. Poverty is already rampant, and now that the fact you can't move things, you can't move product, you can't move food, it's going to be horrific. Healthcare is almost non-existent. So if the virus does get a foothold in these countries, it will devastate these folks, because they're already malnourished. Typically most Africans carry malaria in their blood, even if they're not symptomatic. Parasites are rampant. So it's going to be devastating, so we've been spending a lot of time strategizing on how we handle it, how do we come alongside our partners in these particular countries and help them through this. And, we don't have a lot of good answers right now, but we're trying. I'm typically in contact 2 or 3 times a week with local leadership in Chad, trying to discuss how do we help this? How do we get involved? How do we intervene when we can't travel there? They can't travel. So what does it look like to provide some kind of assistance? And we haven't got any real good answers yet.
Man, I imagine that throws off the course of, I don't know exactly what kind of missionary work you're doing, but usually there's a game plan.
Yeah, we're on the kind of the development side. We're trying to help our national partners create methodologies by which they can fund ministry. So we build small health centers. We help invest in crops. We help invest in school and education. And we also are involved in church planning and discipleship. So we've got 4 or 5 projects that are on the books trying to go, and we can't move with them, and the partners can't move with them. So yeah, it's impactful. But during this time, you have got to, sit back and realize, well, what is God trying to teach us during this time, and what lessons can we learn with this shutdown? And often they're not the easiest things to find, but it's a really important time to reflect and to pray and to get close to Him and find out, what are we supposed to learn during this.
Yeah. Man, how has that also affected, I don't know how y'all get funded, but has there been a stop or a slowdown in the stream of funding that your mission stuff has received, and
A little bit too early to tell, but I'm sure eventually it will, because as people are out of work, obviously their abilities to partner with organizations and missions are going to be somewhat limited. So I would imagine the implications of this won't be seen for another 2 or 3 months, but they will be seen and felt.
All right, man. Well, Kirk, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming on. You shed some light on things I wasn't even thinking about necessarily with the age bracket piece and the community you live in, the mission side of it. Man, this has been really beneficial, and I appreciate that.
No problem.
Typically I'm trying to end this with a fun question, man. I'm a food guy, so man, I don't know what your cheat meal's been, or if there's a certain restaurant you're craving. Oh, when it opens up, I'm gonna go there. Man, what has been your cheat meal of choice?
Well, just because it's only you and I'll tell you this, but yesterday we had a couple friends come over, had a little driveway party. So we sat out in the driveway, we're 10 feet apart, So before that, we went down to Five Guys, which is still open. And, and you order online, they'll walk it out to your car for you. And I got 2 double cheeseburgers and an order of fries. So that's my cheat meal. But honestly, I'm craving, there's a really good local Mexican place, and I'm really craving a big burrito and some nachos, but.
Nice. Man, that's awesome. So you have the Five Guys, cold burger, some fries, and then a nap.
Actually, no, then they came over because we're old people, so we eat early, so.
Very cool, man. Well, thank you again, Kirk. I appreciate your time. Hey, man, if you just want to throw a little thing out here at the end, if there's any way for people to donate to your missions causes or anything like that, if you want to toss in, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I would just say, if you guys are kind of in Orange County, I know you've got a huge food issue down there. I would just ask people, to just give something to your local food bank, your local food pantry, because folks are suffering and folks are hurting. And I think that's one way to help folks, because you can't think and you can't operate with an empty belly. So, right now we're doing okay. And, Africa is doing okay right now. I'm not sure their time will be coming when they're going to suffer a little bit. But I just ask people, if you feel it in your heart, just to give something locally and help these folks who are struggling.
Cool. Well, thanks again, man. Appreciate your time. That's all we got for today.
Cool. All right, Justin, thank you. Good to see you.